And I just turned around and I hauled ass out of there. I was done. I wasn't dealing with that.
The hypocrisy of the cult is one of the things that turned me away the quickest.
When I turned my headlights on, it turned and looked at us. And one of the things I remember the most were the eyes were glowing red.
I see an orb of light. It is just circling these steps like it is waiting for me.
And he begins to tell them that he saw a UFO. They're basically like, what are you talking about? That's 7 foot up on a tree, peeking around it, and that's where I saw the top of the muzzle, nose, and the eyes. As soon as I made eye contact with this thing, it felt like death.
Welcome back to Tinfoil Tales. I'm your host, Brandon. Tonight we're joined by my guest, Jeff. Jeff, thanks for coming on here and talking with me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. And here to tell you my story.
Before we do that, would you like to let the audience know a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I am originally from where you're from, and I'm sure a lot of people that listen to you know where that is. And I have since then moved down south around the Tennessee area, and I've lived down here for probably 40 years. So, and I actually went to high school around where you live, and I've just had something happen to me when I was 15. Happened to me and my cousin on a big fishing trip that was planned by my dad and my uncles. So that's the story I'm going to tell.
Did this happen here around this local area, or was it somewhere else?
This was like it was way back in like 19 if I remember correct, I think it was 1979. I'd have
Okay.
been 15. And it was the biggest fishing type camping trip that my dad and his brothers had ever concocted together. We were just kind of a middle class family. My dad worked in Kokomo and Chrysler, and we were kind of a middle class family. And when we went on vacation, we went camping. And this time we were going up to my dad and his brothers had rented this huge houseboat, and it was in a place called the Land of 1,000 Lakes. I don't know if it's officially called that, but the people from that area call it that. It is northwest of Lake Superior. And the last time I told this story, I messed up and said it was northeast, and I was kicking myself afterwards. But no, it's northwest of Lake Superior. And if you zoom in on Google Maps on that area, just go northwest of North Superior and get right on the Canadian border. The south of the border is Minnesota, and the north of the border is Canada. And there is this channel of just, it's like a maze of rivers and lakes and inlets and islands and little bays. And it literally looks like a maze. And that is the area where they rented this huge houseboat for us to go on a big fishing trip, because we were big campers and fishermen, and we liked to go up into Michigan and and Minnesota and places like that and go fishing. So that's the area we were going. Is right there on the Canadian border, and the Canadian border is literally on the water in that area. The area that we were on once we were out on this big houseboat, it's like the northern shore of a lot of these places was Canada, and the southern shore was Minnesota. So it was up there pretty good, pretty wilderness type area.
So I'm looking at the map right now, and there's, from where I'm guessing it would have been just north of either Duluth and then south of Thunder Bay, because Thunder Bay is Canada's side.
Yeah, if you look at don't look at Lake Superior. Look at the border
Mm-hmm.
of Canada and Minnesota, and zoom in on that kind of area right there, right off of the lake.
Yeah.
You can see why they call it the land of 1,000 lakes.
Right. There's just spots of lakes everywhere.
Yeah, it's crazy. And this when we were driving up there, we drove through Superior. I remember we went through Superior National Forest, and we stopped at one time to sleep overnight on the way up there, at one of the old KOA campgrounds. I think they still exist. Yeah, they do. But it was either right off of or right in the Superior National Forest, and yeah, those were woods, forests, you know, uh, me and my cousin. My cousin was the same age as me, and he was with us. And uh, when you look into the woods, and you're from northern Indiana, uh, I try to explain it. When you look into a woods, most of the times you can see speckles of light, coming through the
Mm-hmm.
other side. There's another side to this woods. And if you can't see all the way through the woods, like maybe you're out by the Sentinel Dam or something, the woods are a little denser, a little bigger, you could just walk in a straight line, and sooner or later, you're going to hit a farmer's field or a country road or something. But man, when you look into the woods, the forest up there, it's different. The trees are like way bigger. You can't see the other side, and that there's like not another side to this woods if you walk in there.
It's like
And
untapped,
yeah,
just raw nature.
yeah, it's like you almost get that feeling like somebody who maybe the first time they ever looked at the ocean, and they're looking out there and they're like, man, I don't see the other side of this. And you get that kind of funny feeling. It's like, it's kind of ominous, the first time you ever see the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
And man, looking into some of these woods up there, it's that feeling, you know. Um, they just it kind of gets you in the stomach. And but yeah, and when we went on through there, and spent the night there and went up, and I can't remember the name of the place. I was too young to care. But I do remember we were pulling two boats. We had like more than one truck, and we were pulling two boats. One of them was a little aluminum boat, a little flat bottomed thing, with a little five. We had a little 5 horse kind of just hand tiller engine, and that was going to be me and my cousin's kind of plaything when we were there. And then we had my grandpa's bigger fishing boat. It was like a 19-foot old aluminum Mastercraft with a big Merc on the back of it, and that was kind of his. My dad and his brothers and my grandpa's that was their fishing boat that they used all the time. And we were gonna tow these. The plan was to tow these behind the big houseboat they rented when we were going to go up into this land of 1,000 lakes, because they had heard that there's like monster walleye schools, and you could catch all these, you could catch muskies and northern pike, and you know and all these kind of big fish up there. So that's where we were headed. And this guy, we got to this place where this boat was, And me and my cousin just thought it was the coolest thing ever. This boat. It was really long, but in actuality, when you look back on it, and you know, it was it was really kind of run down and rickety. It almost reminded you of a trailer on two big long pontoons with two motors on the back of it, and it had like a deck sticking out of the front with a railing, and then a deck on the top. But other than that, it just kind of looked like a trailer on pontoons. But we thought it was really cool, and this this guy that was in charge of this place that was renting this thing that my dad and uncles had been talking to, and they were talking about how to navigate once you got back in there, and that there was this radio on the boat, and there wasn't a whole lot of places to get fuel. Most of them were on the American side, not the Canadian. It was all about these. It was all about these following these yellow buoys or something like that all through there, and because we were planning on going back up in there like 2 days worth of traveling up in there on this boat, and when this guy found out that we were towing these other boats, he looked right at and he saw the little aluminum boat with the small engine, and this old guy, he looked right at me and my cousin, and he goes, "Don't you ever take that boat out of eyesight of the big boat, of the houseboat." And he was serious, man, and he goes, "People have gotten lost, and they have had to send out people to search for people that get lost in this area." He said, "You make sure you don't get away from the big boat. You need to keep it in eyesight the whole time." And that was kind of ominous, and
Yeah.
me and my cousin are like, "Yeah, okay," and so, after that, I wish I could remember the name of that place. I don't even know if they still rent those boats up there like that. I bet they do. Um, but yeah, that's kind of the area we were in and everything. So we were way up there, kind of in the wilderness, in this land of a thousand lakes. And I guess after we dropped the little boats in the water, the little boat ramp there, and they had a parking place for people that rented the houseboats and stuff. And so we got a bunch of they had a little grocery store there. We got a bunch of groceries and stuff, and got on the boat and set off on our little kind of floating trailer park home. I guess we were driving there and set off on our big fishing trip. And we were about the second day. We'd been fishing and running the little boat all over the place, and finding places to anchor. And let's see, I think it was like the second day we were kind of way up in there, the second morning. And I remember this is the kind of wilderness this place is. Um, we saw all kinds of big animals, and it's like one time we were out, and me and my cousin were in the little aluminum boat, and we're kind of putting around, and we were pretty far away from being 15-year-old, we'd get as far away as we could, but still be able to see the boat. And we were probably 200 yards or so away from the bank on this opposite shore line, and we actually saw a pack of wolves. And they just the banks of all of this area, there was islands and inlets and little lagoons and peninsulas, and it was literally a maze. Uh, and there was some big open water places, but other than that, it was really like just this curly, gnarly, just maze of a place. All of the shorelines were the same, though. They were all had this little kind of 3 foot wide gravel beach up to where there was giant boulders, uh, big enough that you could hop, kind of take big steps on and jump from boulder to boulder.
Mm-hmm.
And those went for probably anywhere from 20 to 30 feet back to where then there was the tree line, and then the boulders kind of went back up into the tree line, and the edge of the tree line was just these massive trees, and they were all kind of like they weren't broadleaf, they were all like I guess what do you call them, conifer or pine tree like things, but they were huge and like old growth trees
Yeah.
because we were doing a lot of this on the Canadian side too. And so we see these wolves come out of the woods, and there's like 8 or 9 of them, and they just come bouncing across the tops of these big boulders. And we saw them for probably, I don't know, maybe 7 to 10 seconds run down this shoreline across these boulders, and they were lighting across the tops of these boulders. It looked like they were floating. It looked, I mean, it looked like a kung fu movie. It was just unreal how smooth it was. And then they just turned and bounded back up into the woods like they had done it a million times. And me and my cousin are just freaking out. We looked at each other and we were like, those were wolves. And and we uh we had noticed that the one in the front was twice almost twice the size of the rest of the wolves. It was either a mama wolf with some kind of grown up pups, grown up cub pups, the bigger ones, or it was like the leader of a pack or something, and this one in the front was just huge. Um, and then let's see, we saw during this whole trip, the whole family being out fishing and stuff and doing stuff. We saw moose, we saw bears, we saw beaver, we saw me and my cousin were the only ones that saw wolves. Um, oh, uh, the we had been seeing beavers out swimming around, and you could get up pretty close to them in the boat when they were out swimming and stuff, and then they'd dive. But we saw this one. We didn't know what it was at first. It was an animal up on the shoreline, so we start heading towards it, and we're thinking, it's just kind of down on all fours, and me and my cousin were out in the little boat putting around, and we say to each other, "That's a bear. That looks like a small black bear or something." So we get excited and we're heading towards it. We're out in the water and we're thinking, oh man, we're gonna go get to see this bear. And when we got close enough to it, it was a beaver. It was the biggest freaking beaver that that I had no idea that they got this big.
I talked
Uh,
to, not to interrupt you, but I talked to someone last year that claimed that there was beavers in Canada that people have reported seeing that are huge. It's like
yeah,
almost
this
like you said bear size. I forget the exact measurement these things were, but there's like a ridiculously large beavers.
Yeah, this was like, well, when it was far away and it was just this kind of dark blob on the bank, and we were looking, we thought it was like a small black bear. Um, and we got up there to it, and it was kind of on its hind haunches, and it had like a branch in its hand, and it was kind of chawing on it, and was right next to the water. And we got up closer to it, and man, I swear, if you'd have been standing up there beside it, its head would have been up to your belt line, standing on its hind haunches. It was that big. It was like it was like a German shepherd with a paddle tail. It was that big.
I saw a dead one up by Gary, Chicago area, northwest Indiana, years back, and I didn't know that's what it was, but it was on, like, I think it was like 80, 94, whatever highway that is that goes up that direction. It was just right off on the edge of the road, like right in the center of like where the lanes are split. I thought it was like used like a dog, but it had a big old paddle tail. Like that was a giant beaver.
Yeah, I had no idea they were that big.
Yeah.
I'm thinking they're like this, groundhog size kind of rodent with a flat tail. They're massive. they're massive. And yeah, down here, talking about things dead on the road, I finally saw. I knew they were all over down here, lots of them. Otters down here. When you get a little on the southern side of Middle Tennessee, we get a lot of otters, and I saw one dead on the road on my way to work. Uh, I was on my bike, my motorcycle, going to work, and they're unusually big too. This thing was probably 5.5 feet long from the tip of its tail to the tip of its nose. It must have been like a big male or something, but it was laying out across the road. Somebody run over it, and that's kind of sad for because it's an otter, so it's kind
There
of sad.
there was a place not far from here that actually had an otter that was living off to the side of the road. It had like a little pond area, and there was an otter in it. And I've always wondered whatever happened to it because I know we did a lot of construction through there. So I don't know if it still lived there or not because I thought otters were kind of endangered for around here.
Yeah, there's a bunch of them down here,
Mm.
so I've heard.
Yeah, I'm not sure how it is up here in Indiana. I've never seen one in person. I saw pictures of the one that they'd had and video that they recorded of it out back down around this pond area. So
Yeah, yeah. But well, anyway, we were. Let's see. It was like maybe the second night we were there. We found uh, this kind of it wasn't really an island. It was like if you took an island the size of maybe put about 5 football fields, kind of clam them together, and it was kind of an island like that, but it had like this umbilical kind of piece that was connecting it to the mainland. And it was probably this little piece that connected it to the mainland uh, was probably maybe 150 feet long, and it kind of curved, but it was thin. It was only about maybe 30 feet wide, and it was odd because the island it still had that same bank around it, the gravel and then the big boulders and then trees. And I'd heard that the reason that this a lot of these areas up there look like this, and it's the same with Wisconsin and the what is it, North Dakota and all that. The reason this area kind of looks like this and is because I heard it's all been carved out by the last two ice ages or something like that. The glaciers have carved out these areas to make them form these thousands of lakes like this. And so I guess all these banks are kind of, they're all the same, probably because I'm not sure. I'm not a geologist or anything, but uh, all the banks look the same with these boulders, and so this umbilical part of this. I guess if you had a drone and you were looking straight down on this island and the way it was connected to the land, it would look probably like a tadpole, and the tip of the tail would be connected to the mainland. And then one side of the tail of it, this umbilical cord part of it, made this kind of gravelly beach. I guess it's just the way the currents and stuff was. The gravel part was a lot bigger on one side of it. So the my dad and his brothers and let's see, my grandma and grandpa were there, aunts and me and my cousin, and uh, so there was a bunch of us. We had been catching a lot of fish right there, and man, we were catching fish. It was like they were at one point they were worried about where they were going to start putting fish because the coolers were starting to get full of fish, and they had pulled the houseboat up and kind of banked the front end of it up on this beach and then anchored the back of the houseboat. And we were going to stay in this spot for a few days because we were really catching fish here. And we were, like I said, we were about 2 days back up in there. And so this island, I call it Bigfoot Island in my story that I tell people. Me and my cousin, we're both 15. The island wasn't real big. Like I said, about 5 football fields but big old growth trees on it. And we had been playing on this island for the whole day. We knew the island. We had been all over it. And so that night that we were on that beach and it got dark and we were all on the houseboat, the whole family, we started hearing wolves howling off in the distance. And and we're on the Canadian side, and it's all old growth trees for miles and miles. I don't know, probably 100 miles. But we're hearing these wolves, and it was like you could hear them on one side, and you could hear them on the other, far apart, like it was two different groups. And I really love animals. I'm kind of an artist illustrator at work, as well as the photographer. I work for a marketing department, so I have to do a lot of that kind of artwork and stuff. And my favorite thing to draw is animals. Always has been ever since I was a kid. And so I was loving it, man. You could hear them. It sounded like they were singing. And one side would go off, and then the other side would kind of sound off. And we listened to them for quite a while. We all heard them, and we all went up on the upper deck of the boat. And the whole family was up there. And you get people from Indiana, from that Wabash Valley Basin area of Indiana. You're not used to hearing wolves singing, man. And it was, and
No.
we were all up there listening to them, and it was awesome. It was really like beautiful, really. And then right at the end of it, we had been listening to them for probably, man, I bet they were sounding off for a half hour. Right at the end, there was this one howl that was closer to the boat, not as far away and it wasn't coming from the same place as the other two, where the two groups were. It was really loud and really deep and longer. It was like, I don't know, probably twice as long as a human could maybe hold a note. And it sounded kind of like wolf, but it was just deeper and louder and different. And after it stopped, all of the wolves instantly stopped howling, and we did not hear another wolf that night. It's like that stopped all of the all the sound, and then all you could hear after that was just the bugs, the crickets and the bugs from the forest in the night. And I remember my uncle, he kind of joked about it because it kind of startled everybody. My uncle kind of looked, everybody got silent for a second, and my uncle kind of looked around and he goes, "Wow, that was a big one." And everybody just kind of laughed it off. But because of what happened later, I don't think the last howl was a wolf. I think it was something else. And but yeah, anyway, the next day, me and my cousin were back out in this little aluminum boat, because that's like I said, that little aluminum boat saved me and my cousin from having to be around grown-ups the whole time. That was our plaything out on the lake. That's how we got away. We would steal my grandma's cigarettes and either go to the other side of the island or get in the boat and go out and smoke, because we were 15 and stupid and did that. And this one time we were out kind of on the we were in the little aluminum boat, but on kind of the other side of the island, but we could see the island. And we even had talked about it. We were going, well, it's okay that we can't see the houseboat because we can see the island right there. And we went on down, and then we went uh off. I don't even know what direction it would have been. We were just kind of to the left of the island, and we came around this like peninsula that was sticking out quite a ways. And we see sticking up from the water's edge, this rock face, this cliff face. And it was not straight up. It was like at about a 45-degree angle. So, and it was tall, man. It was some, I can't judge heights like that. It was between 100 and 150 feet tall, but it was only at like a 45-degree angle. And it was just this rock face. And so me and my cousin, we pulled the boat up in there, and we kind of beach it on the little gravelly part of the base of it. And, being teenagers, we proceed to climb this thing because it's like an angle that you can climb. And I remember we got about halfway up it, and we had this. I don't know if you remember the old little instant Kodak cameras.
Yeah.
You'd use them up and take them to the 1 hour photo and get your pictures. And but we had one of those with us, and we were like taking pictures of each other, and we would tilt the camera so that it looked like we were climbing straight up this like Spider-Man. And it was pretty funny. So we were goofing around on this cliff, and we were being loud and playing and climbing and throwing rocks and and climb. But when we got to the top, we went all the way to the top of this thing, and there was the tree line that started at the top of it, and we were standing there looking into that woods. Well, I guess it's not a woods; it's a forest, and we were looking back in there, and it was so dark and so deep because we were on the Canadian side. It was even more kind of eerie looking than the Superior National Forest down in Minnesota. This was like great North Canadian wood, old growth woods. And in between the trees, you could look, and it would just get darker and darker and darker until it was just black. You could look up and see the sky through the canopy of these pines, but when you looked straight into it, it just got to where you couldn't see anymore. It would just turn black, and there wasn't a lot of branches down close. It was down close to the ground, I guess, because the light could not get down to the ground to grow smaller things in this old growth, and it was all just pine needles and moss. So we're looking back in there, and my cousin, he's standing beside me, and he says, "Man," he's getting the same feeling I'm getting, looking in here. And he's like, "Man, you could just walk back in there, and if you made a wrong move or turned the wrong way or you got lost, you'd just be dead." He said, "You'd never come out." And he's kind of creeping me out, and I'm turning, and I turn, and I'm look at him, and we had a little conversation there, about how creepy it was and stuff. But when I turned and looked back into the direction of the woods where we were looking, I got this. I got it. It didn't hit me at first that something was different, but I got this feeling that made me get like really scared, and kind of a dreadful just feeling. And I couldn't really place what it was, but then it hit me after staring in there for a minute because I was kind of puzzled. I was like, something's different. And what it was how a tree can get like a disease on the side of it, or a bug bores into it and it gets a great big knot, big bulging piece that kind of sticks off the edge of the tree. I'm sure you've seen that in woods,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I know what you mean.
It when I was looking back in the woods, I remember there being like 5 or 6 or even more than that back in there. These these lumps on the sides of some of these trees. And when I when I turned to the my cousin was talking to me, and when I turned to look at him, and when I turned back, all of these lumps were gone. The trees were straight up and down. These lumps that were on the sides of these trees were all gone. And it scared me, and I looked at my cousin, I said, "Okay, man, you're creeping me out. Let's just go back, let's climb back down and get out of here." So we climbed back down. I never said anything to him about it till later. But at that moment, because I really my brain did not register quickly that something had changed. And now I think that it could have been something looking around the edges of trees. Something, because they were probably 30 to 40 yards back, anywhere from maybe 25, 30, because they were at it's different spacing going back in there, and then you
Mhm.
couldn't see much further than that. And maybe something looking around the edge of a tree at us, and that was the same color as the tree. So yeah, and we kind of got out of there, and climbed back down, and got out of there, and went back to the little island. And so yeah, that was like the second kind of creepy thing that happened to us on this trip. First being this weird long howl that stopped all the other wolves from howling, and then this feeling at the top of this cliff, um, and the trees changing like that.
About high up on the tree was it? Like the
Well,
could
it
you
was
tell?
if you're looking back in, because at the once you got to the top of the cliff, it leveled out like plateau like, so it was
Mhm.
pretty level with me. And when you were looking, it was anywhere from like my height. And I mean, I grant you, I'm not a tall person. I'm 5'9", and I was probably 5'7" back then when I was 15. Anywhere from like my head height to a little further up. I remember some of them were kind of eye level, and some of them you kind of had to look up at. And but not like way up in the trees. Like, you just some of them were higher up, and some of them were level with me. And but I never saw anything move. Everything was still. But it's just when I looked away and then looked back, they were gone, and there was like I said, there was like 5 or 6 of them. I just remember these bumps on the sides of these trees. So we climbed back down to the boat, and we putted out of there, and got back around and got back to the houseboat. And so it was either that night or the next. I think it might have been that same night. Me and my cousin thought we were going to be big and bad. We were going to go to the other side of the island from where the houseboat was parked on this little umbilical cord peninsula part that was the piece holding this island to the mainland. Um, we were going to go to the opposite side of it, and we were going to night fish, and we were going to fish all night long because we were men. And So it got to be like sunset, and we took the little boat around there. We could have walked, but we didn't. We took the little boat around there because we loaded stuff in the little boat and we went around there. So we're sitting asleep. What all did we have? We had like the little old school orange life jackets to sit on. We had the wool army blankets. We had an old Coleman lantern. You remember the old green one? You had to pump it up, and it made the hissing noise, and you light it, and the things would glow. Um, but we had one of those, and we had foil on one side of the glass of the Coleman lantern, like just halfway around, like up tight on the glass. And this was something my grandpa had taught us about night fishing. That you could set that on the bank on a rock or something in front of you, and it wouldn't shine in your eyes. It would all just shine out into the water, and you could fish. So we had that, and we had two fishing poles, and we stole some more of my grandma's cigarettes. I remember, and we stole two Pabst Blue Ribbon beers, and because that was like my uncle's favorite, and there was a little refrigerator full of it back there. So we swiped a couple of those, and there we were out there fishing, and the sun had gone down, and we were fishing, and we were out there being men, and we weren't being men for too much longer because we caught our first fish, and we realized that we did not have a stringer. We didn't have anything to put this fish on or in. So we sat there and thought about it for a second, and my cousin was like, "Oh, I know what we can do." And he starts digging this hole kind of out in the gravel right beside where the water's kind of lapping up from the lake. And I said, "What are you doing?" He goes, "Let's make a hole right here and let the lake water kind of come down in it. And we'll put big rocks around the front of it, and we'll put our fish in there." So we did, and it worked pretty good. I mean, we put the big rocks around the front so the fish couldn't really jump out, and put a fish in there. And it turns out later we were catching so many fish we had to keep making the hole bigger because we were catching crappie. We were catching these big, like bigger than your hand, thicker than your hand, big keeper size, nice crappie, right? And we had caught maybe a dozen of them, maybe more. And we we hear something, and by this time I'm guessing, I'm just guessing. Let's see, the moon was out, it was high up, and stars were out and stuff. And it was maybe 2 o'clock in the morning, and we hear footsteps behind us in the tree line on the island behind us. We're sitting on the bank facing the water. The Coleman lantern's in front of us, and it's only shining out into the water. We're sitting on these big boulders. The boulders go up maybe 30 feet to the tree line behind us. And we hear something walking in the woods, and it kind of walks down past us. And I can't tell you if it sounded like it was bipedal or walking on four legs or something.
Right.
Yeah, I've done a lot of hunting when I was younger with my dad, and when I was older down here a bit. I don't hunt so much now, but I know that, man, when a deer walks through the woods, it can sound just like a person, just like a bipedal person walking through the woods. And I don't know how people can tell if something is on four legs or two, because even I've been hunting, and even a squirrel, when a squirrel goes through the woods and it's going in the leaf litter, it hops from spot to spot. It sounds exactly like somebody walking,
I
you know?
was filming stuff for this documentary that I was doing, and we were hearing something walking towards us in the middle of the night in an area that we're not even supposed to be in. And it sounded bigger than what it actually ended up being. And it finally came out, it was a possum.
Yeah,
So I was
yeah,
expecting to see something bigger than a possum, but it was just a possum.
yeah. And Yeah, it's crazy. It's 'cause so I really can't see how people can tell if something they say, "Oh, it sounded bipedal." I don't get that. 'Cause like I said, a deer can sound just like somebody walking through the woods. Um, but it was going really slow, like almost no almost a creeping step, not just like chomp, chomp, chomp through the woods. You could tell it was like crunch, crunch, crunch. It was that kind of almost like it's something creeping past. So me and my cousin are immediately the first thing that pops into our heads. Our dads are back there trying to scare us. We're out here fishing at night and we made a big deal about we were going to fish all night. Our dads are back there trying to scare us. So my cousin yells back into the woods. He goes, "We know you're back there. Stop trying to scare us." You know, and we were a little bit worried because we had like cigarettes and beer cans with us. So, but as soon as my cousin did that, the the footsteps stopped, and then just a few seconds later, they started back up again, even like slower. And then they slowly kind of speeded up, and they went on down past us. Further down than the opposite side from where the big houseboat would have been. So, uh, so we're fishing for a little while longer, and we're kind of talking about that and stuff, and about hearing the footsteps and stuff, and we hear this big splash in the water, and it makes that sound like something heavy. We can't see; it's far down from us, down the bank, and it sounded like somebody throwing a brick into the water. It made that depthy kind of that kabloosh kind of noise, not like a slapping, like a fish spattering when it kind of breaks the water. Didn't sound like that. It was that deep sound. And I know I have heard other people on Bigfoot things talk about the same splash, same thing, but this was in 1979. There was not a lot of Bigfoot stuff out. There was the legend of Boggy Creek, I think, was I never went to the movies to see. Bigfoot was not something that you thought about when you was, in farmland, northern Indiana.
Right.
You know,
Yeah, I
you
know.
didn't think about you didn't think about any of the kind of animals that we were seeing that, to rural northern Indiana boys were not used to this kind of animals and carnivores and stuff.
Even today, people around here still don't even consider Indiana like a place you'd think Bigfoot would be.
Yeah, yeah. And I hope you guys see something making your dock.
It'd be nice, but I'm not gonna hold my breath.
Yeah, at least hear something or something. Uh, or at least some footprints or something, would be cool. Um, but we hear this splash and we're like, man, that was a big fish. If that was a fish, that was a huge fish. And we had talked about, my cousin says, well, maybe it was a beaver. And because when we were out in the little boat tooling around in the daytime, we would try to get up close to beavers when they were swimming. And because they were swimming, there was beavers everywhere, man. They were swimming everywhere. And when you get your boat too close to them, they'd get mad and they dive. And they could make kind of a little bit of a like a kabloosh kind of depthy noise, but there was always this like hard tail slap on top of the water. Right when they would dive, they slap their tail on the water when they dive, just by the way they dive. And it made a defining sound. And This was not like that. It was much more like a deep, just kabloosh kind of sound. And so we're talking about that, and all of a sudden, it was just a few seconds after that splash, maybe 30 seconds, we hear these footsteps back behind us in the woods again, except they're going the opposite direction, and they're going back behind us in the woods down the other way from the way they went last time, from the direction of that splash. So we're talking about that, and we're still going, at this point, we're like hoping it's somebody trying to scare us. And we hear another splash on the opposite side of us. That's like the same distance, maybe from the opposite side of us that the other splash was. That same depthy, blues kind of noise. And so I pick up the lantern and I shine it down that way. You know, I'm standing up for just a second. I've got one hand on my fishing pole, one hand on the top of the lantern, and I shine it down that way. And I don't see anything down there. Now, this lantern, it's only shining probably out 40, maybe 40 feet. That's about how far maybe it shine out into the water. So I'm like, I set the lantern back down and I sit back down and we're fishing some more. And we're kind of getting nervous now because we know that that did not sound like a fish. We're not telling each other that we're nervous or scared, but we were. Because we're 15, we weren't going to admit that we were scared to each other. And so we're sitting there and we're fishing, and our backs are to the woods. We're down by the edge of the water on the first set of boulders, kind of off of this little 3-foot kind of gravelly area. And then there's our little dugout for our fish, and then the lake water. And the boat is pulled up on this gravel part, maybe 10 feet down from us. And we're facing the water and we're talking about it. And we hear this crack behind us, but up in the canopy of the trees, the 30 feet behind us, and then up into the branches of the treetops. There's a crack, and we both just freeze. I remember I held my breath, and we're looking out into the lake. The light from the lantern is shining out in the lake. It's not shining back on us. And I swear, this is the part people do not believe. A rock the size of a football, maybe a little bit smaller than a football, like a small football, like a Nerf ball, but that shape, kind of oval, goes tumbling end over end directly over our heads. In the shine of the lantern, we can see it tumbling. It goes out into the water about probably 30, maybe 40 feet in front of us, out into the water. Hits the water in the shine of the lantern and just shoots this splash, this column of water straight up. And I just remember how just straight up and almost stiff this splash looked. And because the lantern was shining on it, and it made that same damn noise, that same exact kabloosh kind of noise. We both stand up, our fishing poles are still in our hand, and we turn around and we face the woods. I remember gripping my fishing pole so hard it made my hand hurt. And nobody's brave enough to pick up the lantern and shine it into the woods. We didn't say that to each other, kind of unspoken. No, neither one of us was brave enough to shine the lantern to the tree line. So our backs are to the lantern, which is shining out into the water, and we're facing the trees. And the only thing that's on the trees is moonlight. And our eyes are trying to focus on these trees, and we're not saying anything. And then my cousin, he whispers in this kind of shaky voice, and he goes, he knew that I like to draw animals and stuff, and that I like, I like studied them. I kind of know a little bit about them and stuff. And he goes, Jeff, he goes, bears can't throw rocks like that, can they? And I just said, no, and as soon as almost as soon as that left my lips, we hear straight in front of us in the tree line, like the boulders we're looking over go back to the tree line, maybe 35 feet, 30, 35 feet. And we can see the trees, but we can't see back in there. Just back in there, we hear this exhale. And it sounded like sounded big. It sounded like a bull exhaling. It was almost like a sigh. There was no voice noise to it. It was just kind of a a big exhale. And man, as soon as we heard that, the fishing poles dropped out of our hands. We went running down those boulders, uh, lighting across the top of those boulders in the dark. You know, forget the, forget the boat, forget the lantern. We were booking it down this bank across the tops of these boulders. Skinny 15-year-old boys running when they think something's chasing them, right? And I mean, I can remember our feet just lighting off the tops of these, almost like the wolves we saw earlier, you know. And when I think back on it, I'm thinking, man, if we'd have fell running full blast in the dark with just moonlight, if we'd have fell on boulders that size, it could have really hurt one of us. Um, but we didn't. I mean, we made it, man. We made it all the way around the left edge of the island, across the little uh, umbilical cord part there, down the beach, and the, the the gangplank, which was just like this kind of wide board that had grip tape on it that they had put down off of the tip of the boat onto the beach so that people could walk up and down it, was pulled up. Didn't stop us in the least, man. Our feet hit the water. We jumped, dove up onto the front part of the boat, front deck that stuck out there, and practically busted in the screen door of the front of the boat. And by this time, it's like 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. Had to be. So we're so people are waking up. We're not waking people up, but like the clatter and the vibration and us freaking out, and people start waking up and they're not happy. They're like kind of angry until it was odd. It was like, what the hell do you two think you're and then they notice how like panicked we are, and they're like, what's wrong? And and we tell them what happened. And I remember my dad and my uncle's faces. They were, not happy because we woke them up. And all of a sudden they hear this and they get this little like grimace grin on their face. And they're like, what are you talking about? Because, they don't believe us because we're 15. And, and we're like almost pleading with them. Right. And they were like, my uncle's like, y'all, you guys just got scared. It's just a moose or a deer in the woods, fish jumping. You guys got spooked and you ran back here. And we were like, no, we knew, we knew that was not the case. But they didn't believe it, and so they're thinking this. And while this is happening, my grandpa, uh, all of these brothers' dad was my grandpa was with us. He gets up. He doesn't say anything. Uh, is not making fun of us. Not saying anything. Gets up, walks out the back corners of the boat, pulls up the anchor, walks back in, puts the key in the ignition, starts the boat up, and backs this whole giant boat off of the. And my dad and his brothers are just looking at my grandpa, and they're like, "Why? What do you do?" And he doesn't say nothing. He just backs the boat off until we're like 200 yards out into the water. He puts the anchors back down and doesn't say anything about it and goes and gets back in bed. Well, this kind of calms me and my cousin down a little bit because now we're out into the lake. And the front of the end of the boat is still pointing towards this kind of umbilical part of what attaches this island to the mainland part. And I mean, who knows? In this area, that mainland part could have just been a bigger island. I don't know. But anyway, this kind of calms us down. And that after we got laughed at, and called, scaredy cats, and the things that dads are going to say to their teenage boys when messing with them. And that night, trying to go to sleep early in the morning, I did finally fall asleep because I remember the kind of the slight glow of the sun when I fell asleep. But before that, I imagine it might have been 3:30, between 3:30 and 4 in the morning. My bunk is on one of these high-rise like RV bunks uh, up off the floor, and there's this. I'm right at the front of the boat, and there's this long, skinny window right at the edge of my bunk that I can see outside. And it's kind of a long rectangle. And there's not much room to lay down up there. It's like one of those overhead bunks. But I'm staring out this window, trying to fall asleep at the peninsula out there. And there's kind of fog, kind of low fog and stuff out there. And I can see the moon on the far side of it. The moon is now not so up in the sky, it's closer to the trees. And I remember the moon was just set right back there. A little bit of fog, and I can see when I see a shape come out of the forest that is the island and slowly work its way across this uh, umbilical cord part, but it was on the opposite side, like it was trying to use the cover of the peninsula part itself to hide it. But it wasn't wide enough and tall enough. And I remember it did look like it was upright. I was like, the boat was probably 200 yards away, and it just didn't look to me like it was like it was wide and square, like the profile of a big bear or a moose or something that would have walked across there. It looked like it was upright to me. And I even remember it looked like something came out and kind of pushed little tree out of its way, because on this little umbilical cord part that was holding this island to the land, there was all these cattails and all of these little sapling trees sticking up through these boulders and out of this gravel and partially out of the water and stuff, cattails and stuff. And as we were playing out there, I remember these cattails being like up to my chin. And all of those sapling trees, which was quite a few kind of brushy sapling trees, where you had to look up at the top of them. Well, this thing that was walking across there, like I said, all I saw was the shape. There was no definition. I couldn't tell if it was hair. I couldn't tell. It just looked like an upright shape in the dark being backlit by the moon at about 200 yards. But I could see it well enough that the cattails only came about halfway up on it. And it was like a head taller than the sapling trees as it went across there. And it just disappeared in to the main part of the forest. once it got across there. And man, I saw that as soon as I saw it coming out in there. I remember I stopped breathing. I could feel my heartbeat in my ears, and I just remember this thing moving across from a distance from us being way out in the water. And yeah, so I mean, it had to be a Bigfoot. I don't know what else it could have been. I don't know what else it could have been. I mean, I guess it could have been a moose or something. I'm always trying to counter doubt myself, kind of debunk,
To
you know.
rationalize it.
Yeah. It's like, because what if I was far enough away? What if it was a moose? But it did look upright. But so you can kind of explain away that shape that went across there, because for one thing, moose are freaking tall. You know, they are every bit of 8 feet tall.
Mm-hmm.
And but I cannot explain that rock.
The
That
rock, the noise.
yeah, especially even more so than the hoof
Mm-hmm.
that we heard. Because I'm thinking a big moose could have made that noise. Could have made that kind of exhale huff noise. But right at that time, right as we said something, facing the woods, right after that rock went over our heads. And so, the next day, my dad and his brothers made me and my cousin go back over there and get all the stuff. So we're having to walk back over there next day. And man, neither one of us looked into that woods. We walked around the edge of that bank to get the boat and the fishing gear and stuff that we had left there the night before. We were not looking into the woods that was on that island. It was kind of funny. We were I wasn't. I was looking straight at the rocks, or I was looking out in the water. I was not going to look into them trees. But we went out there. Nothing had been touched. The poles were laying right where they were. Blankets, the old orange vest we were sitting on the rock, sitting on to be more comfortable. The lantern was there. It was like dead. The lantern was out of fuel. And but the only thing is every one of those, like somewhere between 12 and 16 big crappie, they were gone. There weren't scales or guts around, like something sat there and like something big came and sat there and ate them. They were just gone, all of them. And so yeah, and yeah, so that's what happened
Do you
when I think I saw what I possibly could have saw. You know, everything to me can be explained away except for that rock.
Yeah. I was going to say, do you think because of the rock and the actual noise that you heard when the wolves were going on, have you heard the Ohio sound, like the Ohio scream?
Um, I think so. Is that the one that kind of sounds like a siren?
Yeah. Did it sound anything like that?
A little bit. A li- if you took that voice that was that Ohio scream and the length of it and made it even a little bit longer, and if you took whatever thing was making that noise, now make that thing try to imitate a wolf, and maybe like that.
I think there's stuff out there, and I clearly don't know what they are, but I would like to believe that there's the things that people are seeing are actually something that we're supposed to be seeing. You know what I mean? Like we're not all crazy, but
Yeah.
it's really hard to rationalize how these things could exist if we've never found a body, if we don't find any sort of tangible evidence. If something like this is still out there, they have to have a breeding population. So
Yeah. That's what I think that it might have been on that's what I think might have been on top of that cliff.
the children of it, the smaller ones.
Uh, Either that or just a whole different, like, family group, because it was a little ways away from the other house, but I guess they would probably have a really huge territory, a bunch of them. But I mean, and maybe, I mean, maybe these things that they just that top of that cliff, like that was just a place that they knew that they could live. Maybe they just because the view from looking off of the top of that cliff out into this like maze of land and water and this old growth trees and stuff was amazing. It was an amazing the way that looked when you looked out off the top of that thing once we got up there. And maybe that was just like a I don't know if you'd call it a family or a clan or pack or what you call them, but maybe that was just their spot. And they were just like, what the hell? These things are climbing up here, you
Hmm.
know? And so we're like crashing the party, so to speak. And because how often would somebody have climbed up that cliff in that wilderness,
Yeah.
out there? It, and that, like that dude telling us, stay inside of the boat because people get lost, it's that kind of area. So how often would some kids have found that and tried to climb that thing, climbed up to the top of that? So them things they might have been up there and been like, "Oh my god, they're coming up here."
I think
So,
with the way technology is today and everything else, for me, I want to believe that we'd be able to capture something because there's security cameras up now. Everyone has a phone in their pocket with a
yeah.
camera on it. But yet there's still a lacking of any sort of credible
Yeah, I
stuff.
know, and I think about that, like, you think about the police helicopters when they're chasing guys and they're using the thermal, and you can really see a
Mhm.
dude at night running through the woods
So
because he's just shining, man. They got that they can detect the heat of his body, and, you can really see that dude.
even the stuff that I've bought for this documentary, the thermal is really pretty good thermal in my full spectrum camera. Like when we were out there, I'm picking up all these what people would consider orbs, but I think they're just bugs. Like once I looked at the footage and everything, to me, they're not orbs, they're just bugs. But we don't
Yeah,
see them because it's so dark. But this is picking up every sort of detail. I think that's where a lot of misconceptions comes from a lot of paranormal people too. Is like you see dust particles, you see bugs,
yeah,
and most people are like, oh, that's sign of activity. Or if you look at it from a skeptical stance like me, I'm like, no, I'm gonna try and write everything off I can because I don't want to put out there what I
well,
false stuff.
I'm my what I do for a living is a lot of photography, uh, and I run with a group that does a lot of big video for big commercials, uh, just from the place I work. Um, and I'm here to tell you when I've seen these videos of what somebody says are orbs, it's it's dust that's too close to the camera that is bokeh. It's bokehing out. Bokeh is when something is out of the field of focus, out of the depth of field, so it blurs. And it doesn't blur to a fuzzy edge. It can blur to a hard edge. And it can look like an orb. And that's exactly what that is. Because I know, man, I know I've been a photographer for 30 years. And yeah, I know that that's what that is. It's bugs and dust and stuff that's out of out of the field of focus, out of the depth of field that the video cameras are catching.
Yeah.
But it looks cool.
Yeah. I've
It looks ghosty.
I've had a lot of people send all these blurry photos. I've seen people posting up so many blurry photos, and I see a lot of pareidolia, and I see so much stuff when it comes to these cryptid photos and things that people are seeing. And I don't see it personally half the time. I might see where they're getting like a shape of something. That doesn't mean that's a Bigfoot or a dog man or whatever it is they're claiming they're seeing, because to me it looks a lot like just blurry bush photos. You know what I mean? Like it's not.
Yeah,
I don't see anything definitive other than
yeah, that thing where you think you see a face or a
mhm,
human, and it's like a bush or something.
right, yeah,
What is that? What is that?
pareidolia,
That's right. Okay, you already said that.
yeah,
Okay, pareidolia. Yeah, like the stump squatch.
mhm,
Uh, oh, my grandpa, the the next day after all this happened, uh, my grandpa kind of pulled me aside, uh, and he starts to tell me. He says the reason. And my grandpa was a railroad worker, very serious guy, and he said he didn't joke a lot. Uh, he said the reason that he didn't make fun of us and he just pulled the boat off, didn't say nothing to even his own kids, is that he was in the big boat, the bigger boat that we were pulling with the big Mercury engine, the big Mastercraft. That was my grandpa's. He was in Upper Peninsula, Michigan at this was a story he was telling me at a lake called Perch Lake in Upper Peninsula, Michigan. He said him and some guys in another boat, there was two boats, they were up there fishing for walleye. They were trolling for schools of walleye. And he said they got to this one part of Perch Lake and they saw this cabin up on the bank. And they said they were within 50 yards of the bank. And and he said they all had this conversation about, man, that looks like it could be a pretty nice cabin. It doesn't look old, but yet the windows are all broke out of it and the doors are hanging off of it. There's brush all grown up around it. And there's no boats or anything down on the little dock that was down in front of this cabin, going out into Perch Lake. And he said as they were talking about that, they were trolling by this 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 cabin, like I said, about 50 yards out. He said coming from the brush that was around that cabin, all of a sudden came raining all of these rocks. He said that were anywhere from the size of a golf ball to the size of a tennis ball or so. He said like dozens of them just plopping all around the boats, coming. They had to come out of the bushes that were around the cabin up into the air, and this is broad daylight. They can see them coming up out and splashing all around. And they all looked at each other and they said they got scared. They were like, if one of these rocks hits one of us, I mean, if something like that hits you in the head, it could maybe kill you.
yeah,
So it like they had to literally punch it and make a little dash for it and get out of range of these rocks. He said that's why he pulled the boat away and didn't say anything. And when he told me this, he made sure we were not around anybody else and he was whispering. And this was on that trip.
hmm,
So Yeah, that's why my grandpa just pulled the boat off of that bank and anchored it back out by himself because nobody else was doing anything.
Do you think anyone else after that had all happened, and it's been years from now, but did you ever talk about it with the rest of your family?
Oh yeah. This is a this is a camp this is a grandpa. I'm the grandpa now.
Mm-hmm.
This is a grandpa campfire story that I've told for years. I barely even get excited when I tell it anymore. This is just something that I've told. Uh, my cousin's in Texas now. He won't talk. My cousin will acknowledge it, but he won't like tell it or talk about it. Like he's just like, yeah, that happened.
Yeah.
You know,
People are funny
that,
to me that way. Some will talk about things and some want nothing to do with it.
yeah, he'll acknowledge it, but he'll just be like, yeah, that was pretty crazy, but that's all I got to say about that. You know.
I seen you said you had some other things that have happened too, but I was thinking, depending on how long those could take, we might be able to do on a different episode because we've been going on for almost an hour and a half now.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. I can come back. And the fun those the two other stories. One of them is me on a date on River Road. And it's not the we called, oh man, what is the road that's right across the Mississinawa River from it's on the
124.
it's on the opposite side of the Slocum Trail. What is that road that's on the other side of the river?
So there's 124 that goes to the
It's not
east.
124. We used to call that River Road. To us, there were three river roads.
Yeah.
It was West End River Road, East End River Road, and then Cinewell River Road. We called that road, it wasn't 24 and it wasn't 300. It was that littler road that took off. And back then,
There was Wallach Road over that way too.
yeah, back then it was gravel. But it's something that happened on that road. And then the other one is my sister's story. That my sister's 1 year older than me, and she was in 2002. She was a head nurse, and her DO and director of nursing. They were in charge of starting a new nursing home right in that area somewhere. Maybe out by maybe when it was Grissom Air Force Base.
Okay.
And it's a story about something that happened to two ladies
Okay.
in there. So that's the two other one's my sister's, and yeah, and the other one is another one of me when I was not 15 but 17.
Okay.
So
I'll,
those can be, if you want me to come back sometime, we can
Yeah.
do that.
I'll definitely have you back on. It might be a few weeks from now, but I've got some stuff opening up here in the next couple weeks, so I should be able to get you back on.
Yeah, shoot me an email.
Yep.
And we can do that because that's right in both of our stomping ground right around there. So
Right. Yeah. The River Road one definitely has me interested because that's the same vicinity of where I keep filming at. So definitely want to know more about that one.
yeah, I don't know if that road might not be gravel anymore.
I don't know of too many roads out that way that are gravel except the one that goes to Okefenokee. So, but that's now off limits. So.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
All right.
we can probably wrap this one up, but I just want to say thanks for coming on here tonight and talking with me about it.
All right. It's been fun.
It's been a pleasure having you on. But again, for anyone listening, we'll have Jeff back on here in a few weeks and we'll continue on. But thanks to Jeff, and thanks for,
like I say, when anybody asks me if I believe there's a Bigfoot, I'm just like, yeah, there probably might be,
Yeah.
you know?
That's how I am anymore. I was like, I think there's something out there. I don't know what it is, but people are seeing something.
Yeah. And I don't think it's woo-woo. I think it's an animal.
Mm.
I don't think it's any of this, you know, space stuff or dimensional stuff people talk about. I think it's an animal.
I never,
Everything that happened to us in Minnesota was physical.
right.
You know, there were footsteps, there was breathing, there was a huff, there was, you know, it was all it's an animal. It's a great ape or something like that. So,
That's the path I used to lean towards, but now, again, like I said, without the bodies and everything, it's really hard to wrap your head around what they could actually be. I want to think that they're a physical thing because of all the interactions that you get, but
yeah, but where are they? Where do they go? Yeah, I
exactly.
get you.
Yeah.
I get that.
So
I get that.
So to try and be rational and skeptical and open-minded, it's hard to navigate, but that's just one of those many questions that I come across and I think about is if these things are flesh and blood, then they have to have a breeding population, they have to have bodies, they have to have a food source, they have to have all these things, and for some reason we're not able to track that.
Yeah.
So,
But yeah, and I mean, you know, if you do the math on that rock, I mean, 35 feet past the boulders and then 35 to 40 feet out into the water over our heads. And if you've that's 80 feet plus.
Mhm.
And if anybody out there has ever picked up a rock the size of a football, there's no way.
they need to be in the shot put.
There's no way. You'd need a catapult. You'd need some kind of a catapult to do that.
If you'd like to be a guest on Tinfoil Tales, remember to send an email to tinfoiltalespodcast@gmail.com or go to tinfoiltales.com and go to the contact section. Make sure to follow me around on all the social medias. And just remember, truth comes at a cost. Are you willing to pay the price?
I heard a story late last night about something lurking along the wood line. Huge footprints, strange lights in the sky. They claim it's nothing, but I know they lie. It's easier to laugh in my face, but something about this makes me say, what if it's real? What if they knew? What if the answers are coming from you? Spinning stories, wasting my time, hearing voices, is it all in their minds? They can call me crazy, but I just want some proof. What if it's true? What if it's real? What if it's true? What if the world's not what we knew? Tinfoil tales pulling me in, a story that starts where the logic ends. What if it's real? What if it's true? The answers are waiting, they're waiting for you. They see a dog man walking, or maybe a mothman flies above the buried giants, hidden beneath the lies. They say it's just stories, it's all make-believe. Fairy tales for the things we can't perceive. They want to keep us blinded, they want to break our will. But I'm not buying it, I'm not swallowing another pill. Force-fed poison, the lies we're made to believe. What if the truth could set us free? Alien signals traveling through time, secret space programs erasing their minds. They call them crazy, but I just need some proof. What if it's true? What if it's real? What if it's true? What if the world's not what we knew? Tinfoil tales pulling me in, a story that starts where the logic ends. What if it's real? What if it's true? The answers are waiting, they're waiting for you. They laugh, they lie, we all could die. demon's ghost, the Nephilim too. What if it's me? Or what if it's real? What if it's real? What if it's true? What if the world's not what we knew? Tinfoil Tales pulling me in, a story that starts where the logic ends. What if it's real? What if it's true? The answers are waiting, they're waiting for you. It's all in our heads, it's all in our minds. These voices can't be silenced, the truth must rise. Tinfoil Tales, it's pulling me through. What if it's real? What if it's true?